Commander Veltar Crix adjusted his viewing screen and watched a small blue planet spinning lazily in the void. Earth, home to the newest species applying for coalition membership. He had seen dozens of worlds like this one, filled with beings who thought they understood the universe, but had barely crawled out of their own solar system. The humans were no different. Crix had spent 3 months studying their military records, their technology, their social structures. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. They were weak, emotional creatures who had somehow managed to avoid destroying themselves long enough to develop basic space travel. Their weapons were crude, their tactics predictable, and their process was corrupted by feelings and personal attachments. Another farming species, he muttered to himself, making notes on his datapad. The Veltari had seen it all before. Primitive beings who grew food, built simple machines, and dreamed of exploring the stars. They usually made decent workers, once they learned their place in the galactic order. A soft chime indicated someone approaching his observation deck. Crix looked up to see Captain Li Dong, one of the human representatives, walking toward him with that peculiar human gait. Too much energy, too much movement, inefficient. Commander Crix Li Dong said, offering that strange facial expression humans called a smile. I hope you're finding our documentation helpful. Crix studied the human carefully. Average height for his species, dark hair, wearing a simple blue uniform that looked more like work clothes than military dress. His hands moved constantly, touching surfaces, adjusting his clothing, fidgeting with a small metal object. Classic signs of nervous energy and poor emotional control. Your species shows interesting potential, Crix replied diplomatically. It was always best to be polite during these initial assessments. No point in crushing their spirits before the formal evaluation was complete. Your civilian technologies are quite advanced for such a young civilization. Li Dong's smile grew wider. Thank you. We're excited about joining the coalition. Though I should probably warn you, Commander humans have a way of surprising people. Crix felt his neck frills flutter slightly, an involuntary response his species made when amused. They all said that. Every primitive species claimed they were special, unique, different from all the others. The truth was much simpler. There were strong species and weak species, advanced civilizations and primitive ones. The humans clearly fell into the latter categories. I'm sure your people have many admirable qualities, Crix said, returning his attention to his notes. Your agricultural output is impressive. Your manufacturing capabilities show promise. With proper guidance, humans could become valuable contributors to coalition mining and farming operations. Something flickered across Li Dong's face, an expression Crix couldn't quite identify. It lasted only a moment before the human's smile returned. That's very kind of you to say. We do take pride in our work. Li Dong leaned against the viewing rail, looking out at his homeworld. Tell me, Commander, what's the most important thing you've learned about warfare in your career? The question caught Crix off guard. Humans asking about warfare was like children asking about advanced mathematics. Still, it was a fair question from someone trying to understand his place in the universe. Preparation, Crix answered without hesitation. Superior technology, logical planning, emotional control. The Veltari have perfected these principles over 3,000 years of conquest. We study our enemies, identify their weaknesses, and exploit them with maximum efficiency. Li Dong nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Very systematic. It's the only way to achieve consistent victory. Emotion leads to poor decisions. Unpredictability leads to waste. Your species, Crix paused, choosing his words carefully. Your species appears to value individual initiative and emotional responses over coordinated strategy. This will need to change if you wish to survive in the larger galaxy. The human captain was quiet for a long moment, still staring at Earth. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost thoughtful. Commander, How many wars have the Veltari fought? Hundreds. We've brought peace and order to 47 star systems. And how many have you lost? Crix's 4 eyes blinked slowly. It was an odd question. Lost. We don't lose wars, Captain. We study, we plan, we execute. Victory is simply the logical outcome of superior preparation. Li Dong turned to face him, and for just a moment, Crix saw something in the human's eyes that seemed older than his young face should contain. Something that made the Veltari commander's instincts stir uneasily. That's interesting, Li Dong said quietly. Humans have a different relationship with war. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've lost more battles than most species have ever fought. But we learned something important from all that losing, which is, the human's smile returned, but it seemed different now, less friendly, more knowing. We learned how to lose everything and keep fighting anyway. We learned how to turn defeat into victory, how to make weapons from kitchen tools, how to fight wars that can't be won and win them anyway. Li Dong straightened up, suddenly looking less like a nervous farmer and more like something else entirely. We learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the strongest enemy, Commander. It's the enemy with nothing left to lose. Crix felt a chill run down his spine, though he couldn't explain why. The alarm pierced through the quiet of the Nexus Prime at exactly 3:47 in the morning. Crix jerked awake in his quarters, his 4 eyes adjusting quickly to the flashing red lights. Emergency signals meant one thing in Coalition space. Someone was in serious trouble. He found Captain Li Dong already in the command center, standing perfectly still while chaos erupted around him. Other Coalition officers ran between stations, shouting status reports and coordinate data. The human just watched the main screen, with an expression Crix had never seen before. What's the situation? Crix asked, taking his position at the analysis console. Research Station Kepler, 438b, replied Commander Thex, a blue-skinned Alterian. Hegemon pirates hit them 2 hours ago. Standard raid pattern. They've taken hostages and are demanding tribute. Crix pulled up the tactical display. The numbers were clear and depressing. The research station held 237 beings from 6 different species. The pirates had brought 3 warships, each one armed with weapons that could turn the station into debris in minutes. Standard Coalition protocol was obvious: mourn the dead and reinforce other stations. How many humans? Li Dong asked quietly. 43, Vex replied. I'm sorry, Captain, but there's nothing we can do. The pirates have defensive positions, superior firepower, and they're using civilians as shields. Any rescue attempt would result in total casualties. Li Dong nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked toward the communications station. Captain, Crix called after him. Where are you going? To get my people back. The words were spoken so simply, so matter-of-factly, that it took Crix several seconds to understand what the human had said. When the meaning hit him, he felt his neck frills stand on end. Captain Li, surely you understand the tactical situation. A rescue mission would be suicide. Those people are already dead. Li Dong stopped walking and turned around. The expression on his face made Crix take an involuntary step backward. Commander Crix, the human said in a voice like frozen steel, those people are not dead. They are in trouble. And when humans are in trouble, other humans come to help them. That's what we do. Within 6 hours, Crix found himself strapped into a human assault ship called the Fire Eagle. He had volunteered to observe the mission, partly for research purposes and partly because he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans were actually going to attempt a rescue. The crew was small, 12 humans, with names like Park, Kim, Choi, and Song. They moved around their ship with practiced efficiency, but there was something different about them now. The nervous energy Crix had observed before was gone, replaced by something cold and focused. Sergeant Park Yoon was modifying standard Coalition medical supplies into something that looked suspiciously like explosives. Private Kim Hae had torn apart 3 different weapon systems and was rebuilding them into a single, impossible-looking device. Corporal Choi Jin was reviewing station blueprints while simultaneously sharpening a knife that seemed too large to be regulation equipment. This violates every principle of logical warfare, Crix muttered, making notes on his datapad. Emotional attachment to individual casualties will compromise tactical effectiveness. Lieutenant Song Dal overheard him and laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Commander, with respect, you don't understand humans very well. She finished loading ammunition into a weapon that definitely wasn't Coalition standard. We don't fight logical wars. We fight human wars. What's the difference? Logical wars can be lost. Human wars, ... She paused, checking her equipment one more time. Human wars end when every human is dead, or everyone else gives up. Usually it's everyone else. The assault began at 14:30 station time. Crix watched from the command station as human forces hit the research facility from 7 different directions simultaneously. They didn't follow standard assault protocols. They came through maintenance shafts, emergency airlocks, cargo bays, and ventilation systems. When pirates tried to block doorways, the humans went through walls instead. Sergeant Park Yoon appeared on the security feed, moving through a corridor filled with armed pirates. She should have been cut down in seconds. Instead, she moved like liquid death, rolling behind cover that shouldn't have existed, firing from angles that should have been impossible, and advancing when any rational being would have retreated. A pirate grabbed a human civilian and pressed a weapon to her head. Standard tactics said the rescue team should negotiate or find another route. Park Yoon put 3 rounds through the bulkhead behind the pirate, then tackled him when he spun to look for the shooter. Why isn't she eliminating the prisoner? Crix asked. Because he's not the enemy anymore, Captain Lee Dong replied through the communications link. He's wounded and needs medical attention. Crix watched in fascination as Park Yoon began treating the same pirate she had just shot, working quickly to stop his bleeding while other humans secured the area around them. Private Kim Hae had somehow gotten inside the station's main computer system and was using their own security systems against them. Blast doors slammed shut, cutting off pirate escape routes. Environmental controls began flooding sections with sleeping gas. Emergency lights started flashing in patterns that seemed designed to confuse and disorient. The entire operation took 43 minutes. When the shooting stopped, every single hostage was alive. 17 pirates were dead, 12 were wounded and receiving medical treatment, and 8 had surrendered after watching their friends get methodically dismantled by creatures they had assumed were weak and primitive. Crix stared at his datapad, trying to process what he had witnessed. By every logical measure, the mission should have failed catastrophically. The humans had been outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting from the worst possible tactical position. Instead, they had achieved perfect victory, with 0 friendly casualties. 3 months after the station rescue, everything changed. Crix was reviewing supply reports in his temporary office aboard the human vessel Iron Will when the communication alarm started screaming. The sound meant only one thing: incoming priority. Message from Coalition High Command. Admiral Kim Sora appeared on the main screen, her face grim. Behind her, Crix could see other human officers moving with urgent purpose. The relaxed atmosphere he had grown used to was completely gone. All stations, this is Admiral Kim. As of 0800 hours this morning, the Hegemon Empire has declared war on humanity. They have launched simultaneous attacks on 7 human colonies. New Seoul is burning. Port Busan is under siege. They've killed over 30,000 civilians in the first wave. Crix felt his breathing stop. The Hegemon Empire was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. They had conquered 12 star systems in the past decade, using overwhelming technology and brutal tactics. Declaring war on them was suicide. "What are your orders, Admiral?" asked Captain Lee Jun from the bridge. Admiral Kim's eyes went cold, in a way that made Crix's spine tingle with fear. "Authorization granted for Protocol 7. All human forces are weapons-free. No restrictions. No limits." We tried to be civilized. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Show them what humans look like when we stop pretending." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Crix looked around at the human crew, expecting to see panic, fear, or desperation. Instead, he saw something far more terrifying: calm acceptance. "Protocol 7, Crix asked quietly. Captain Lee Jun was already moving toward the weapons locker. "Something we hoped we'd never have to use, Commander. It's what we call total war." Within hours, Crix understood what that meant. Every human civilian vessel became a military transport. Cargo ships started carrying missiles instead of supplies. Medical ships became mobile command centers. Even the small personal shuttles that humans used for family trips were being fitted with weapons systems. On Earth, factories that made children's toys switched to producing ammunition overnight. Food processing plants began manufacturing chemical compounds that Crix didn't want to think about too carefully. Schools became training centers where 12-year-old children learned to build explosive devices from household materials. "This is insane," Crix muttered, watching a human grandmother demonstrate how to turn a kitchen blender into a communication jammer. "You're militarizing your entire civilization." Private Yunhei looked up from the weapon she was modifying. She couldn't have been more than 20 years old, but her eyes held something ancient and terrible. "Commander, you still don't understand. We're not militarizing our civilization." She smiled, and it was the most frightening expression Crix had ever seen. "We're showing you what human civilization actually looks like when someone threatens our families." The transformation was complete within a week. The same species that had seemed chaotic and emotional had become something else entirely. They moved with purpose now. Every action coordinated toward a single goal: destroying everyone who had hurt their people. Crix watched Captain Song Min tear apart a captured hegemon communication device with nothing but basic tools and determined fury. Within 6 hours, she had not only figured out how their technology worked, but had improved it. "How is this possible?" he asked her. "Humans have been taking apart things and putting them back together better for thousands of years," she replied. "Weldon stolen alien components into human weapons. We just usually do it with farm equipment and kitchen appliances. This is easier." The first counterattack came 2 weeks after the initial hegemon assault. Crix expected standard coalition tactics: organized formations, careful planning, overwhelming force applied at strategic points. Instead, he watched human forces hit the enemy like a plague of locusts. They didn't fight battles, they fought everywhere at once. Human ships appeared from impossible directions, struck with devastating effectiveness, then vanished before the enemy could respond. They used captured hegemon technology better than the hegemon did. They turned the enemy's own weapons against them with modifications that should have been impossible. Lieutenant Han Wu showed Crix footage from the first liberated colony. Hegemon soldiers, who had terrorized a dozen star systems, were surrendering in massive groups after just 3 days of fighting humans. "They keep asking us the same question," Han Wu said, reviewing the interrogation reports. "They want to know why we fight like we're all insane. What do you tell them? The truth. We're not insane, we're just human. And they made the mistake of threatening our families." On the tactical display, Crix watched human forces coordinate across impossible distances. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Soldiers who should have been dead kept advancing. Entire human populations moved like a single organism, focused on one purpose: victory. The hegemon empire which had spent decades conquering other species through superior technology and ruthless efficiency, began losing ground to creatures they had dismissed as primitive mammals. "How long can you maintain this level of warfare?" Crix asked Admiral Kim during a brief communication. She looked tired, older than when the war had started, but her voice never wavered. "Commander, you're still thinking like this is a war that might end in defeat. Let me explain something about humans. We don't lose wars. We just fight them until the other side gives up, or there's nothing left to fight over." She paused, looking directly at him through the screen. "And we're very, very hard to kill." Crix began to understand that he wasn't just observing a war. He was watching the birth of something new and terrible in the galaxy. 6 months into the war, Crix stopped writing reports. His superiors wouldn't believe them anyway. He floated in zero gravity aboard the human battle station Defiance, watching through reinforced windows as human engineers worked on captured hegemon technology. They moved in spacesuits like they had been born in vacuum, welding alien metal and rewiring systems that had taken the hegemon decades to perfect. Below them, the wreckage of 3 hegemon battleships drifted in the void. Ships that should have been unstoppable. Ships that human forces had torn apart in less than 4 hours, using weapons that shouldn't have worked. "Commander Crix," a voice called behind him. He turned to see Colonel Han Wu approaching, her uniform bearing new scars from the latest battle. Half her face was covered by medical gel, where shrapnel had nearly taken her eye. But she moved like the injury meant nothing. "Colonel, I was observing the salvage operation." Han Wu joined him at the window. "Amazing what you can do with motivation, isn't it?" 6 months ago, Private Li Tay had never seen alien technology. Now he's rebuilding hegemon plasma cannons to work twice as well as the originals. How is that possible? Because he's fighting for his daughter. She was in the school. They bombed on New Seoul. Han Wu's voice stayed calm, but Crix could see something burning behind her eyes. Turns out humans are very creative when someone hurts their children. Through the window, Crix watched a human soldier named Park Jin working on what looked like a standard coalition medical scanner. Except Park Jin had somehow connected it to a hegemon weapon system and was using both to create something entirely new. What is he building? Psychological warfare device, Han Wu replied casually. It reads enemy brain patterns and then broadcasts sounds that cause panic. Park Jin used to fix radios for a living. Now he fixes minds. The concept was horrifying. It was also brilliant. Across the station, humans were doing impossible things with tools they had never seen before. They treated captured technology like puzzle pieces, taking apart advanced systems and rebuilding them into something better. They learned faster than any species Crix had ever studied. A communication alert sounded. The main screen showed Captain on the Jin calling from the front lines. "Status report," Han Wu said. "We've taken the hegemon supply depot at Kepler Station," On the Jin replied. Her uniform was torn and bloody, but she was smiling. "Minimal casualties on our side. The enemy is asking for terms. Terms. They want to know what they have to do to make us stop." On the Jin's smile grew wider. "I told them there's only one way this war ends. They leave human space and never come back. Forever." Crix stared at the screen. "Captain, the Hegemon Empire controls 12 star systems. They have millions of soldiers. You can't simply demand they surrender. Why not?" On the Jin tilted her head, looking genuinely confused. "They started this war. They killed our people. Now we're going to finish it." The communication ended, leaving Crix alone with Han Wu. Around them, humans continued working with focused determination that never seemed to fade. "Colonel, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Your people fight like you don't understand the concept of losing. Like defeat simply isn't possible. How do you maintain that mindset when facing superior odds?" Han Wu was quiet for a long moment, watching her soldiers work. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "Commander, let me tell you about human history. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. Not against aliens, against each other. We've perfected every possible way to kill, to survive, to endure. We've fought wars with sticks and stones, wars with chemical weapons, wars that should have destroyed our entire planet." She pointed to a young soldier welding alien metal. "That's Private SEO. Damn. His grandfather fought in the Korea War, with nothing but a rifle and determination. His great-grandfather survived 3 years in a prison camp by eating grass and drinking rainwater. His family has been fighting impossible wars for generations. And they're all still here. Because humans don't fight wars to win them, Commander. We fight wars to survive them. And we're very, very good at surviving." As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as automated voices announced incoming enemy forces. "Hegemon battle group approaching," the tactical officer reported. 15 ships. They'll be in firing range in 20 minutes. Crix felt his heart begin racing. 15 Hegemon warships could destroy the station and everyone on it. Hanwoo just nodded calmly. "Signal all human vessels. Standard response protocol." Colonel Crix said urgently, "You have 3 ships. They have 15. You need to evacuate." Han Wu looked at him with something like pity. "Commander, you're still thinking like this is a normal war. Let me show you what humans do when someone brings superior numbers." The next hour changed everything Crix thought he knew about warfare. The humans didn't try to outfight the Hegemon ships. They outthought them. They used the station's gravity well to slingshot around the enemy formation. They fired from impossible angles using weapons they had built from spare parts. They coordinated attacks across multiple vectors, while the enemy was still trying to figure out where the humans were. When the shooting stopped, 12 Hegemon ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 3 were trying to surrender. 0 Human casualties. Crix stared at his hands, trying to process what he had witnessed. In one engagement, he had watched humans defeat an enemy force 5 times, their size using nothing but superior tactics, an absolute refusal to accept defeat. "Now, do you understand?" Han Wu asked quietly. He did. Finally, terrifyingly, he understood exactly what humans were. The war ended on a Tuesday. Krix stood on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship Eternal Victory, watching human rescue ships pull survivors from the burning remains of the Hegemon homeworld, the same species that had fought with terrifying savagery for 8 months now, worked around the clock to save the lives of their former enemies. It made no sense. Nothing about humans made sense anymore. "Final casualty reports," Commander Admiral Kim Sora said, approaching with a datapad in her hands. She looked older now, worn down by months of constant warfare, but there was something peaceful in her expression that hadn't been there before. "How many?" Crix asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Hegemon military losses, approximately 2 million dead, 5 million wounded or captured. Civilian casualties, ... double quotes." She paused, checking the numbers. "Nearly 0. Crix's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "How is that possible? I watched human forces destroy entire fleets. We destroyed their ability to fight. We didn't destroy their people." Kim Sora gestured toward the rescue operation below. "Look at them, Commander. Those are the same soldiers who were shooting at us yesterday. Now we're pulling them out of burning ships and giving them medical care." Through the massive viewing windows, Crix could see human medics working alongside former Hegemon prisoners. To treat the wounded, Lieutenant Park Yoon, who had single-handedly destroyed a Hegemon battlecruiser the week before, was now performing surgery on enemy soldiers with the same focused determination she had shown in combat. "I don't understand your species," Crix admitted. "You fight wars with absolute brutality, then show mercy to defeated enemies. You turn your entire civilization into a weapon, then use that weapon to protect the people who tried to kill you. Admiral Kim smiled sadly. That's what makes us human, Commander. War doesn't define us. It's just something we're very good at when we have no other choice. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The screen showed Captain Lee Jun calling from one of the rescue vessels. Admiral, we've got a problem. What kind of problem? The good kind. We've rescued about 12,000 hegemon survivors, but their own government is refusing to take them back. Something about contamination by human contact. Lee Chun's expression was grim. They're calling their own people traitors for surrendering, instead of dying. Kim Sora closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Crix saw something he had never expected to see in a human military commander. Doubt. Recommendations, Captain. Well, Admiral, we could just drop them off in neutral space and let them figure it out. Or, ... Lee Jun paused, looking uncomfortable. Or we could offer them refugee status in human space. Full citizenship, new homes, protection from their own government. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Crix watched Admiral Kim wrestle with a decision that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of warfare and mercy. Approved, she said finally. Any hegemon citizen who wants to live in human space is welcome. We'll find room for them. After the communication ended, Crix stared at the human admiral in amazement. You're going to adopt your enemies? Some of them, the ones who want a different life. Kim Sora returned to watching the rescue operations. Commander, can I ask you something? In all your years studying warfare, have you ever seen anything like what just happened? Crix considered the question carefully. The Hegemon Empire, which had conquered 12 star systems through superior technology and overwhelming force, had been completely destroyed by a species that most of the galaxy considered primitive. Not just defeated, utterly dismantled as a military power in less than 8 months. Never, he admitted. Your tactics, your adaptability, your refusal to accept defeat. It's unlike anything in recorded military history. That's because you've been thinking about this wrong, Commander. You've been trying to understand humans as just another species that fights wars, but we're not. She turned to face him directly. We're the species that invented war. Every other species in the galaxy fights organized conflicts with rules and logic and predictable outcomes. Humans fight wars. What's the difference? The difference is that when other species fight, they're trying to win. When humans fight, we're trying to survive, and we'll do absolutely anything, become absolutely anything, sacrifice absolutely anything to make sure we keep existing. Her voice grew quiet. That's why the hegemon lost. They were fighting to conquer us. We were fighting to not die. Those aren't the same thing. Through the windows, Crix watched human engineers working with hegemon technicians to rebuild communication systems on the damaged planet. Yesterday, these same beings had been trying to kill each other. Today they were building something new. Together. Your final report, Commander? Admiral Kim asked. Crix had been dreading this moment for months. How do you explain to a galactic civilization that everything they thought they knew about warfare was wrong? Admiral, when I first observed your species, I believed you were primitive, emotional, weak. I was completely wrong about everything. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Humans don't fight wars the way other species do. You don't just adapt to warfare, you become warfare itself. And then, when victory is complete, you become something else again, which is the species that rebuilds what war destroyed. Crix gestured toward the rescue operations. You're not just the galaxy's newest members, Admiral. You're going to be its protectors. And frankly, the rest of us should be grateful you've chosen to be our friends, instead of our enemies. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. The galaxy's a big place, Commander. There's room for everyone who wants to live in peace. As Crix watched humans and former enemies working together to save lives, he realized the war had changed more than just military tactics. It had changed what it meant to be civilized. The universe would never be the same.